My name is Christopher Benjamin. I'm the chair of the Staunton Democratic Committee. Our moderator for tonight is Antu Nguyen, who is the spectacular CEO of the Shenandoah LGBTQ Center, and she's been a moderator for some of our events in the past.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Candidates Forum. I'm really looking forward to having a really great discussion with our candidates joining us this evening. As mentioned earlier, my name is Antu Nguyen. I am Executive Director of the Shenandoah LGBTQ Center. Welcome to our center. You're currently sitting in our ritual room, which is a great community space that we like to partner with community partners to host events and forums such as this. So welcome. I'd encourage you to walk around the space as well when you've got some time for break. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to speak to all of the things. So, okay. I'm going to give a brief overview of what's going to happen tonight. First, we'll be hearing from Mr. Joe Perry and Mr. John Baber, both running for the race of Commonwealth Attorney here in Staunton. We were originally going to also hear from Michaela Venable running for House of Delegates, District 36, but we just heard from her that she has a work emergency, so she will not be joining us this evening. However, lastly, we'll hear from both Ken Mitchell and Pete Barlow. Both of these candidates are hoping to run for the Congressional 6th District race in 2026. So we've got lots planned for tonight, so lots of great discussion. I'm going to start with just a few housekeeping items. I'm going to ask everyone to silence your phones to minimize any disruption for our candidates tonight and for those in the audience. And as I mentioned, we'll be recording tonight, so that would be helpful. I want to point out, I think there's candidate literature in the back, yes, along the tables behind you. So please I would encourage you all to visit and take a look as well. Okay, so tonight, I have the immense pleasure of serving as this forum's independent moderator. The questions that I've compiled tonight are a reflection of the many, many, many conversations that I've had out in the community through my role here at the center, but also as chair of the City of Staunton DEI Commission. I'm also excited to open up for questions from the audience as well. So you may have noticed as you were walking in, there are forms being circulated where you're able to submit your questions. If you have not seen that, please do. And I encourage you to submit your questions, and I will read them when it gets to that portion of the evening. None of the questions have been shown to the candidates ahead of time or to any of the associated political party. After each question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and there will be not an opportunity for rebuttal. Do folks have any questions? Tracy is serving as our lovely timekeeper, keeping me and everyone on track. Okay, and lastly, I always like to start with group norms. The center here has been a safe and a brave space to many of us. So it's one of the very best things that I love about the center. So we love to foster a space of community dialogue, but we acknowledge that that's a responsibility that we all sort of share together. So I'll gently remind everyone that we are all deserving of respect, and we will hold each other and everyone in this space with that same regard. Yes? Okay. Everyone, please welcome the candidates running for Commonwealth's Attorney in Staunton, Virginia, Mr. Joe Perry and Mr. John Baber. Okay. I believe we're going to start with opening statements from both candidates. Joe, if you'd like to start, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Right. Thank you. So my name is Joe Perry. I have met some of you I've met tonight, some of you I've met before. I am running for Commonwealth's Attorney for the City of Staunton. I have been a prosecutor for about 15 years in my career. This month I'll be 20 years licensed attorney in Virginia. I've spent my entire career in this state, graduated from the College of William and Mary in 2005. And decided in law school that I wanted to become a prosecutor. I come from a family of helpers. My parents were both in the medical profession. My brother is in the medical profession. I took a different path. I took a different route, but the aim was the same, and that was to help people. And I went to law school with that goal in mind. and I've been a prosecutor for most of my career. About 5 years, I did private practice. I did some defense work, DSS work, that kind of thing. But I think it's fair to say at this stage, having been a prosecutor for 15 of my 20 years, that I'm a career prosecutor. I believe in the power of this office to do good in the community. I believe that the role of the prosecutor is to keep their community safe, is to protect victims, to give victims a voice in the court system, and to make sure that the law is applied fairly for everybody. As I said, I graduated from William & Mary 2005. I joined the Staunton Commonwealth Attorney's Office in 2018, and in 2020, I became the Chief Deputy. I have served in that role for the last 5 years, and in that role, I have prosecuted many of the more serious cases that have come through our office. In my career as a prosecutor, I have prosecuted everything from DUIs and embezzlement cases all the way up to rape, child abuse, homicide. I've prosecuted the entire gamut of cases that we see. And as Chief Deputy, I have prosecuted some very serious cases that come through our office. My focus has been on child abuse. And I tell people when I am campaigning, when I'm canvassing, that protecting kids in our community is what gets me up in the morning, and it's what I take home at night. I take that job very seriously, and I've worked very hard in my time here for this community. And I'm running to keep doing that work. I am not a politician. I am a working attorney. My belief is that the job of the prosecutor is to go to work every day, to work hard for the people of the community, to treat everybody fairly, to give victims a voice in the court system, and to do their best to keep their community safe. And that is the work I've done, and that is the work I want to keep doing. I'm running this year, and I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your support so that I can keep doing the hard work that I've done every day for the last 7.5 years. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Baber. I'm running for Commonwealth's attorney in the city of Staunton. And I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Staunton Democrats and the LGBTQ Center for hosting us. It's a beautiful space. I think it speaks to some of the best stuff about Staunton that we're here right now, that a building which once was to the exclusion of most is now dedicated to the inclusion of some of the people that are under some of the greatest threat in the country today. And it's a safe and happy place, and that changed over time. And I think why it's so fitting that we have this forum here is that I'm running on a platform of evolving the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, of updating it to the 21st century. And there's no better spot than in a place that has been updated through not just accidents, not evolution, but rather the foresight of people, the passion and the hard work of people. And that's how I am proposing to bring this office to the 21st century, is through my hard work and through community engagement, which what Staunton wants, needs, they're already here. So I'm going to back up and tell you a little bit about me. I moved here from Baltimore City almost on accident, and my wife and I got jobs here in town as prosecutors, and we fell in love with this place. Something special in the mountains, the community fabric of this town, and the local criminal justice system, the great police we have in Staunton. It really snuck up on us how much this place checked all of our boxes. My wife and I, we bought a house here. We had our first child here, and we really loved this town, or invested in this town. So when I knew that the current Commonwealth attorney was retiring, I wanted to step up and do my part to serve this town, seeing what things are like outside of this town, outside of Virginia, and what this town needs, what they want already. And I've figured out some about what the town wants because I've spent my time campaigning, knocking on doors, about 4,500 doors. to talk to the people of Staunton about what they're looking for in a Commonwealth Attorney's office. Now, how did I get qualified to run for the Commonwealth Attorney's job? Well, to start, I went to college. I went to graduate school. I was a high school teacher for a while. I taught ninth grade world history to low-income kids. And that's where my public service started, in education and dealing with people. Prosecuting is also a people job. I started in public service and in a people job. I went to law school in Baltimore and got a job at the public defender's office in Baltimore out of law school, representing people again. Poor people, indigent people, mostly African-American males in their 20s, in a system that was functional and broken at once, and really continued my passion for service there. After a number of years in the public defender's office, I, again, another happy accident, stumbled upon a job teaching law at the Baltimore Police Academy. I'd kind of spent enough time cross-examining police in court when being a defense attorney that when the opportunity came to help improve the Baltimore Police Department, of which I was a citizen of Baltimore, I jumped at it. And I taught law in Baltimore to new police officers for 3 years. And I loved every second about it. It was important service. I came down here to Staunton and I became a prosecutor as a coworker of Mr. Perry's, and then most recently was a prosecutor in Waynesboro. Took a year off to renovate part of my house before my wife had my child. And I tell you all that to tell you I'm deeply steeped in public service, but I have a breadth of experience that I bring to running this office. Doing one thing for a while will give you tunnel vision. I've seen the world. I've seen all sides of the justice system. I have the vision necessary, and I have the mandate of the people whose doors I knock on, who say, this is what I want. I want to meet the person. I want to be involved. I want to know more about what's happening, why a case pleads out. I want to have more say in how justice is dealt with in Staunton. I want to be more involved, and that's some of what I offer. Now, violent people need to go to jail, by and large. That's a broad statement. However, there are tons of sick people in this city that need more help than they're getting. And that takes more than just programs. It takes a philosophy that I bring through my time dealing with people in public service. And I ask that you vote for me so I can bring your philosophy into action in Staunton. Thank you.
Thank you for this statement. Can you hear me? Okay, well, we'll proceed to the next segment of this forum. So I have a little question for both of you. And we'll sort of go back and forth, and who starts first? Mr. Bakery, you'll be going first this time. So I've had a lot of conversations with community members that were unaware of the scope of the responsibility and the role that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office plays in our local criminal justice system. So to start, can you share your personal philosophy of the role that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office plays in shaping the broader context of our local justice system, including some of the duties that may go beyond the courthouse? Mr. Baker, would you like to start?
Sure. The Commonwealth's attorney in jurisdiction is the chief law enforcement officer. The buck stops at the Commonwealth's attorney's office. There's actually a large amount of power vested in the Commonwealth's attorney. They don't have a boss. You're their boss. It's not the governor. It's not the attorney general. It's the people every 4 years. It's the way the Constitution of Virginia is set up. That's a huge amount of responsibility, but it's not just a working lawyer. It's a leader. It's a community member. It is a person that gauges not just, what the law is, which we will learn in law school and is written in books, but also what the public interest is. And that's how you approach dealing with crime, is not just, this is what the law says you have to do, but there's something big called prosecutorial discretion where you can use to shape how it is you deal with an individual case, because people are different. They're not ones and zeros. So no two cases can be the same. And that's where your worldview, your experience, as well as your knowledge of what the people who you represent want you to do. And so it is an outward-facing position. It is not just chief lawyer who's good at cases. The leader of the office is that, a leader. And leaders should be involved in the community, taking their cues from the community, and then answering to the community. A huge part of that is transparency. Cases come in, you see a blurb in the newspaper about this case got charged. And then 9 months later, you see a blurb in the paper, here's how it ended. And you don't know why. You don't know what happened to the middle. And a lot of times those go through plea agreements, which are in a court record, but you don't know anything about. That's the function of open court. That's what it's supposed to be, is that you know something about it. And the people want to know what's going on in their town and why an office is making the decisions they're making. Why do some people get it taken easy on them and others don't? Why is jail the answer sometimes and not others? So the job of the Commonwealth's attorney is to know what the public interest is, what the public's opinion is, as well as to answer to the public about, I did this and this is why. So it is a huge part of the job is being transparent and connecting with the community, because you're not just taking whatever comes in and dealing with it. You have to consider all times, what are the effects of what you're doing when someone's convicted of a crime? What are the collateral consequences? What's the public interest? What's the safety needs of this Commonwealth? And you get that through talking to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll repeat the question. Can you share your personal philosophy of the role that the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office plays in shaping the broader context of our local justice system, including some of the duties that go beyond the courthouse?
So I think one of the things I've tried to convey to people, one of the things that I think it's important for people to understand is that the Commonwealth's attorney has a role in the system. We don't make the law. We don't create the law. We don't create policy. Our job is to uphold the law, to make sure that the law is applied fairly for everybody. Ultimately, our job is to represent the Commonwealth in court. To do that, you have to have know-how, you have to have experience and competence and skill. It's a very difficult job, and one of the reasons it's a difficult job is because you have attorneys on the other side who are very skilled at what they do. We have a very good defense bar in Staunton and Augusta County. And these attorneys, their job is to represent their client to the best of their ability. And they do a very good job of that. So you need a Commonwealth's attorney who at the end of the day can go into court and represent the Commonwealth of Virginia in enforcing the law and upholding the law with experience and competence and skill that the job requires. I've been doing this for 15 years. I learn every day. I'm still learning. And there are people that know better than me how to do the job, and I reach out to those people. I talk to my boss, Jeff Gaines, every day about cases. There are people that have greater experience than me that I reach out to for advice about cases. But I do think it's important for people to understand that the role is limited because we don't make the law. We can't reshape the system. Ultimately, that is done in Richmond. That is done at the General Assembly. And they make laws that sometimes we like, sometimes we don't like, sometimes we find the laws flawed. But in any case, we have to make sure that the law is applied fairly and equally for everybody. Again, that is a very difficult job, but the job of the Commonwealth's attorney is not to reshape the criminal justice system in some way that better reflects the will of the people. And the reason of that is because the will of the people is reflected in the General Assembly. We elect our delegates and our senators to go to the General Assembly and make the law that represents our interest. And everybody has a vote, everybody has a say in that. So the job of the prosecutor really should be a modest one. It is to do the best in every case that comes before them, to make the best possible decision on a case-by-case basis for a particular victim, for a particular defendant. And again, that is a very hard job. Doing that by itself is a very, very difficult job. I've worked very hard at it, work hard at it every day. But to do that job well, again, you need considerable experience. And at the end of the day, what Staunton deserves is a Commonwealth's attorney who has the experience dealing with the most serious cases so that they can go to court and get an appropriate result. in those cases where somebody has been killed, a child has been hurt, a person has been sexually assaulted. It's good to talk about the will of the community, but at the end of the day, what Staunton needs and deserves is a prosecutor who can go to court in those serious cases and do the job well and do the job appropriately to the best of their ability. And that is what I bring to the office. And if elected, that is what I'll bring to the elected position. The Commonwealth's attorney, the elected Commonwealth's attorney, cannot delegate everything to their assistants. They have to be able to do the job themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, I'm going to put you back on the spot. This is question number 2. Many advocates for reform within the justice system call for increased data transparency and accountability in reducing racial disparities within the criminal justice system, including disparities that we see in arrests, prosecutions, and sentencing. That, coupled with broad concerns around increased policing, as seen in other areas around the nation, can you share specifically how your previous experience has honed your prosecutorial discretion and how you might address these calls for transparency and accountability if elected?
So ultimately, the Commonwealth's attorney does answer to the people, and they answer every 4 years at an election. But they do answer as well to explain why they may have handled a case a certain way. Now, ultimately, we cannot talk about cases while they're pending because we're prohibited from doing that by ethical rules. But once the case is over, we do owe it to the public to explain how a case may have turned out. Now, that being said, we're not going to criticize a judge or a jury. I don't think we should do that. But if we made a particular deal, a plea bargain a case, reduce the charge, for example, I think some transparency in that is absolutely appropriate. And in my job, I talk to news reporters all the time about case outcomes. And I explain, sometimes on the record, sometimes off the record, why I made a certain decision in a particular case. I think that we have a good media in our area. They are interested in these cases, and I get calls from them all the time about how I've handled certain cases. Again, the extent to which I can talk about that, it depends on the case. It depends on the situation. Certainly, there are sensitive cases that I don't go into detail about. But I certainly agree that we owe it to the public to talk about why we've made certain decisions in certain cases. With respect to concerns about racial disparities, I am certainly open to the idea of looking at the data, looking at our cases, and determining whether there might have been some racial bias in the outcomes. I handle every case that comes before me to the best of my ability. I use my judgment that has been honed over years of experience to make the best decision I can in every single case. I make those decisions based upon what I believe is right for the community. That is not to say that sometimes systemic issues cannot creep into the work that we do, and I'm open to looking at that. But ultimately, this job is about judgment. This job is about making decisions every day, day in, day out. And judgment, in my view, only comes from experience, and that is what I bring to the table.
Thank you. I'll repeat the question. Would that be helpful?
Please.
Can you share how your previous experience specifically has honed your prosecutorial discretion, and how might you address these calls for transparency and accountability if elected?
Sure. So my previous experience, which I went over, I worked with the most vulnerable people, whether it was low-income students or low-income adults who the only attorney they could get was one provided free by the government. I understand the experience of marginalized groups through standing shoulder to shoulder with them in court, by teaching them, by interacting with them here in Staunton, not just through my campaign, but through my daily life, my service. Now, this idea that there are disparities, of course there are. This is the Valley. This is America. There are disparities. And the fact that my opponent would be open to looking at them, why hasn't he? It kind of can't go both ways. I've been here for 7.5 years. I'm the chief deputy, but you know what? I might look at it since you asked me. And that's the point of why I'm running. Part of the public accountability is a free and open election. You don't run every 4 years. You run every day as you answer to people for the job that you do. This isn't a come cash a check in 4 years sort of thing. This is every day you check with people and say, am I doing the public's will about this job? Because it's more than just being a little king and deciding cases as you will. It is doing the job that the people of Staunton elected you to do, and showing them on a daily basis, telling them whether or not you are adhering to that. So there's this kind of idea in the criminal justice system, by and large, but definitely here in the Valley, that it is the way it is because it is. And that's how we do it. That's a good tagline. Why do we do it that way? Well, it's how we do it. And I think we can do better than that. I think we can tell people why we do what we do. And a lot of what I just mentioned about we have this discretion to address disparities because no two cases are the same. If I were already doing the job, I'd be more than open to looking at it. I'd be doing something about it. And more than that, I'd be telling you what I'm doing so you can see if what I'm doing is acceptable to you. The criminal justice system, by and large, nationwide, has maligned poor, disadvantaged minorities, people that can afford less when it comes to paying an attorney. That needs to be taken into account. Justice means doing the right thing, not winning. And experience means breadth, not just depth at one time. So if you want a leader, look for breadth of experience. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 3. Mr. Baber, you'll be starting this round. Although Staunton is a safe city, like any jurisdiction, we do experience serious crime. It is ultimately the responsibility of the elected Commonwealth's attorney to ensure that these cases are handled with competence, professionalism, and skill. Please describe your experience handling the most difficult and serious cases you've handled in your career as a prosecutor, and discuss what you have learned from your prosecution of such cases.
Every case is different. Every case takes preparation to start. It takes interaction with law enforcement, with victims, with defense attorneys, with court staff. It also takes a certain humility to approach the most serious cases and say when you don't know what you don't know, which is often. The law is vast and cases are complicated. And it's not about having the answer as much as, are you humble enough to go find it? And are you smart enough to understand it? I've handled most of the serious cases that are out there. I've not had the pleasure of handling a homicide myself. I believe Mr. Perry's handled one adult homicide. So he's got one on me there. What I'd say is it's not the case. It's how you handle it. And to start, you handle it by being prepared. One of the toughest kinds of cases out there, I think, that's unsung are embezzlements, because they are complicated, they are not sexy, they are usually with a disorganized or even completely negligent victim sometimes, or someone that's older and vulnerable. And people that steal in that way are very sophisticated. And to deal with one of those cases, I think will tell you everything you need to know about being an attorney. Honestly, you deal with a case where somebody's shot, stabbed, hurt in some way. You have a victim, you have an injury. Hopefully you find a weapon, you have a person that did it, you put the case together. And if necessary, you have a trial in open court, which is the most amazing way to test a case. A free, fair, and impartial jury to measure whether the Commonwealth carries their burden. However, there are all these other cases that don't see an open court where preparation's key when it comes to financial crimes, or when it comes to complicated burglaries or drug racketeering operations, of which I've tried those cases, where they work in the shadows and you have to put it together based on electronic evidence or based on piecing together what you hope is enough because the case isn't perfect and the perpetrator was rather skilled in hiding a lot of his crime. So I think it's a misnomer, the idea that somehow like a murder would be the end all be all. Rather, the case in front of you with a real victim is the end all be all, and every case deserves that level of care. So I'd say preparation, but also the humility to reach out and the connections with other prosecutors, other attorneys to say, hey, I need more about this. How can you help me understand it? Which I've done plenty, because in the end, we're human beings. We're not expected to know everything, no matter if you have 7 or 15 years experience prosecuting. And I'd say the most important thing is handling every case like it's going to be on the front page of the paper. And that way you never miss a beat. Thank you.
Please describe your experience handling the most difficult and serious cases you've handled in your career as a prosecutor, and discuss what you've learned specifically from your prosecution of such cases.
As I said at the beginning, I've handled in my career everything from DUIs to embezzlement cases, financial crimes, credit card theft and fraud cases, felony eluding, all the way up to armed robbery, rape, and yes, homicide. I have, in fact, handled 2 child homicide cases in my time here in Staunton, and I wouldn't use the word pleasure to describe that experience at all. There was nothing pleasurable about it. It was the hardest experience I've had in my adult life is dealing with those cases. And I think to minimize that evinces a lack of experience and understanding. Ultimately, the elected Commonwealth attorney cannot rely on their assistants or even their chief deputy to handle those kinds of cases. If we have a homicide in Staunton, it is the job of the Commonwealth attorney to make sure that case is handled appropriately. If we have a rape in Staunton, it is the job of the Commonwealth attorney to make sure that case is handled appropriately. One thing I noticed in John's answer is that he talked about an embezzlement case. He didn't mention any experience with sexual assault, child abuse, homicide, robbery, entire categories of serious offenses that will fall on the lap, on the desk of the Commonwealth attorney. And if he's elected, they will be his job to prosecute. I have experience handling those cases, and I can tell you they are incredibly difficult. And to answer the question, what I've learned from them is that they require hard work, they require diligence, they require anything involving work with a victim, particularly a child victim, involves a significant amount of investment of time with that victim to earn that victim's trust. Ultimately, if you're going to take a case to trial with a child, that child has to trust that you're going to have their back, that you're going to protect them, and that takes work to earn that trust. I have sat in a witness room or in my office with a child or with the child's mother or grandmother waiting on the result of a jury trial, and I can tell you it is the most excruciating experience that you will imagine as a prosecutor. I've tried over 30 jury trials in my career. Many of those have been sexual assault, child abuse cases. Those are the most difficult cases for many reasons. And my opponent just doesn't have that experience. Like, he's tried 1 jury trial. That's a significant difference for the people of Staunton. They need somebody in the elected Commonwealth attorney who can do those cases. You cannot rely on your assistants. You cannot rely on the other people in your office to be able to do those cases. They are hard and they require considerable experience to do them well.
Thank you. Question number 4. Mr. Perry, you'll be going first. Can you share one aspect or program of the local criminal justice system that you feel is working well to protect our community? And perhaps one aspect or program of the local system that you would like to see improvement if elected. And with that, please share what specifically has shaped your perspective on this.
So when I was first hired in 2018, one of my assignments was the domestic violence caseload. I did that for a few years, and then when I became the chief deputy, I moved into a different caseload, and we hired an attorney in, I believe it was early 2021, who took over that caseload. And that is also a very difficult caseload for many reasons, but it's an important one because people are very high risk in domestic violence situations. And when I handle that caseload, I work very closely with our domestic violence coordinator, Kathy Jenkins, to keep victims safe. I took those cases very, very seriously. One of the positive things I have seen develop over the years is that we now have a very good, very well-evolved program that is designed to address domestic violence, people who find themselves charged with domestic violence. We call it the DVAP program, Domestic Violence Alternatives Program. It is run through Blue Ridge Court Services, and they do a fantastic job in addressing recidivism with those cases and working with people who either had their case taken under advisement or in some cases were convicted. And it's not just domestic violence. It could be protective order violations, anything that falls into that area. And that is a very good, very effective program. I think we are lucky here in Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro that we have well-developed programs. Blue Ridge Court Services does a fantastic job. District 12, our felony adult probation, does a fantastic job. They have a lot of programs, a lot of which we don't necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about. I learned fairly recently that Blue Ridge Court Services has a reentry program for people who have gotten out of jail, helping them get their feet back, get back on their feet, find a job, get housing, that kind of thing. As far as what we need improvement on, there's a long, and I see Tracy's about to hold up this sign that tells me I don't have a lot of time left. 1 minute. What we need improvement on, we do need improvement. And what I can tell you from my perspective in the juvenile court, what I've done for the entire time I've been here is work in the juvenile court. And one of the frustrations I see every day in that court is we run into funding issues sometimes getting kids the help they need. I'm not going to go into details, talk about specific cases because I can't, but it can be very frustrating when you have a child and everybody knows what that child needs. And the question that the problem we end up running into is a bureaucratic one. We run into funding. How do we find funding to get this child into the appropriate program? Everybody can agree what the child might need. Getting the funding for that is where we run into problems. We certainly have significant problems in our community with drug addiction, with mental health. We have good programs, recovery court, therapeutic docket that are designed to help people who are court involved deal with those problems. And I have seen very good results from both of those programs. They're intensive, long-term programs. They're not, hey, take a class and get back to me when you're done. It is long-term, intensive programs that really have helped people. I've seen it firsthand how those programs have helped people. So we have a lot of good here in Staunton. We have a lot of people that are working in our criminal justice system, whether they be in juvenile court services, Blue Ridge Court Services, whatever it may be, that are working very hard for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Baber, can you share one aspect or program of the local criminal justice system that you feel is working well? Perhaps one that is that you would like to see improvement if elected. And with that, please share what has shaped your perspective on this.
I think I would point out the therapeutic docket program, which is run out of the General District Court as a docket that is like an intensive probation for mostly mental health issues, is something that's run extremely well and with a lot of care by members of the Blue Ridge Court Services, as well as members of the different Commonwealth attorneys' offices. Waynesboro, Augusta, and Staunton all participate in that program. And I think for low-level offenses, for people that were going through a mental health crisis or need to get their life straightened out, that program can work really well to assist someone, prod them, give them appropriate sanctions when they don't respond as they need, and eventually graduate these people with a lot of hope and a plan for doing better in the future, which is huge, the plan portion. So I think that's done really well. What's not done well, not enough at the pretrial stage before the case comes to trial. Where is the community mediation, which I learned at the last public forum the Commonwealth Attorney's Office in Staunton had until they abandoned it years ago. Where is that? Where is pretrial diversion, more straight arrest to drug treatment? Someone could spend 30 days in Middle River waiting on their first court date after arrest, or they could spend it in a rehab, maybe even in Roanoke, someplace away from people, places, and things. in order to make that happen, that takes a philosophy of caring for people, even if you're prosecuting them. Now, part of why I have that vision is my breadth of experience. As my opponent just said, he's only been in the juvenile court system. He's going to tell you all about the serious juvenile cases he's done. That's where the majority of experience is. It's narrow, and that's great for a prosecutor. Mr. Perry's a good prosecutor. However, for a leader, I think what Staunton is looking for, what they deserve, is someone with an overview of the whole system that understands the human condition, that understands law, that understands the community, law enforcement, city council, how to get funding, someone who's willing to interact with community and manage an office. Part of getting more of these programs for Staunton has to do with stepping up and managing different service providers, getting them together in an interdisciplinary roundtable, which isn't being done, getting the different mental health providers, drug treatment providers to meet once a month and figure out how to best coordinate their efforts. This is an outward-facing thing. These are all things that have nothing to do with trying a case. So why am I mentioning it? Because it should be the job of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. We're operating on two different assumptions here. One, Mr. Perry's selling you what has been the job of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And no one's ever changed that, because the last time we had a contest for this job was 40 years ago. So I'm telling you what I think should be and what I think the people want it to be. And he's telling you what has been. What I'm saying is what has been given a chance. And I'm here offering things like more programs, more community interaction as a leader, because I believe that's what the people want. This job is more than the serious case. This job is about the community. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'll ask questions that we have received from the audience, and I'm looking at just checking in on time. We're doing okay? Doing good? Okay. All right. Let's do some questions from the audience. Y'all ready? Yes? Okay.
How many minutes? 2 minutes still?
2 minutes for response. I think that's working well. The first question is, oh gosh, I already lost track of who went first last time.
I got it.
You did? Okay. Mr. Baber, this is a question for you. Thank you. Will you favor alternatives to carceration when appropriate in a case? And how will you ensure that those options are applied equally across groups?
Jail's not the answer. It's a box you put people in. Now, some people got to be put in the box. If they're a danger to the community, if they won't change their behavior, if the crime is so serious, that's what jail's for. However, jail is not a drug rehab. Jail is not an eviction tool. Jail is not a punishment one person meets out on another. Jail has a specific purpose. However, alternatives to incarceration, I think, get some misnomer like it's somehow less strict about crime. And I got to tell you, as a prosecutor, I routinely offer people either a weekend in jail or 80 hours of community service. And they take the weekend in jail, which is wild. You say, whoa, the no jail option, community service. Yeah, but that's too hard. And so people will take the jail against their own best interests. Community service can be restorative. Different alternative resolutions, community mediation can be restorative. It can solve a problem. Jail, for mental health issues, for drug addiction issues, kicks the can. It's easy. No one ever asks, why are you being so hard on crime? That's what prosecutors do. However, when you give someone a chance, you got a lot of people in this community to answer to, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to answer to all of you and say, this is why we're doing it, and we're going to see how it goes. Or here's the method where we can make this work. I've seen too many people go to jail long enough just to lose their job and their house. And that destabilizes the community. It doesn't just destabilize the person. It destabilizes their spouse or their children or their mother. Again, jail is appropriate and sometimes very warranted. However, the person has to be thought about in all this. And that's where a lot of the alternatives to incarceration come in. Sometimes the alternative is a long-scale drug court or a therapeutic docket where you get someone back on their feet. Sometimes it is supervised community service in order to get a charge reduced or dismissed. Sometimes it's community mediation to solve that problem with your neighbor. But the idea that jail alone fixes things, I think, is something that is a relic of the past and something that I'm looking to change in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat? I don't, not at all. Will you favor alternatives to incarceration when appropriate in a case? And how will you ensure that those options are applied equally across groups?
So, that go by. Once again, I think it's a bit of a misconception that our office does not practice alternatives to incarceration. My opponent wants to suggest that he is reinventing the wheel. We have practiced alternatives to incarceration for decades. We have, as was alluded to earlier, a restorative justice program in the early 2000s. Our jurisdiction and in this area has really been at the forefront in a lot of ways in criminal justice reform in the state. We have, as we've both talked about, we have the recovery court, which is for people with significant substance abuse addiction issues. We have the therapeutic docket, which is for people with mental health diagnoses that have found themselves court involved. I have certainly seen, again, those alternative dockets provide great success for many people. And the idea is for people that find themselves court involved because they've done something in the community that got themselves brought into court. If they are nonviolent, if they don't have a record, we can help them. We also have first offender for drug possession. We have first offender for domestic violence. As I alluded to earlier, we have the DVAT program, which is designed to help people that find themselves charged with domestic violence cases. We go out of our way in a lot of ways to avoid sending people to jail if we can avoid it. We're not sending people to jail just for possessing drugs. We're not sending people to jail for being addicts. We work with them. One of the things I found over the years as a prosecutor is that if there isn't some incentive, some reason for somebody to get treatment, get help for their problems, whether it be a drug addiction or a mental health problem, and they've done something that has brought them into court, right? Because there are people that struggle with drug addiction that we never see. But if they've done something that's brought them, that's offended the community in some ways and brought them into court, typically the only way they're going to get help is if there's some incentive for them to do so. If there's some carrot or some stick in some cases. And so we do, in some cases, need jail. Now, that the other side of that is for the most serious offenses, for violent offenses, for people who hurt children, for people who commit serious offenses like sexual assault or robbery, we need a prosecutor in Staunton who is capable of seriously prosecuting and bringing a great depth of experience to bear on making sure that people who pose a threat to our community, people who hurt people in our community, that they're held accountable for their actions. And so there's the other side of it, that we need a prosecutor who can handle those serious cases. Our office has, again, in many cases, worked to find alternatives to incarceration, and we'll keep doing that if I'm elected.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, this question is for you. I'm going to combine a couple since folks had a similar questions. So, given our current environment, how do you balance the pursuit of justice with ensuring the rights of the defendant are not violated? How do you specifically define justice? And then I can repeat that. Sorry if that's a little. Okay, let's do it one more time. Given our current environment, how do you balance the pursuit of justice with ensuring the rights of the defendant are not violated? How do you define justice?
Well, how do I define justice is a very big question. Justice is doing right by the community. Justice is keeping the community safe. Justice is protecting people who have been victims of crime. And justice is creating an environment where people feel like they are safe and protected in our city. I've worked very hard at that over the last almost 8 years in this office for this city. gone to work every day, working hard and trying to do my job to the best of my ability so that people in this city feel safe. That is no easy task. It takes experience and skill and commitment. So justice is creating an environment in the city where everybody feels safe. Everybody should feel safe here. The other side of that is balancing those considerations with making sure that people's rights are protected, with making sure that you are not being unduly harsh with people who may have made a mistake or may be struggling with things in their life. And the only way I can answer that question, to be perfectly frank, is you have to make the best decision that you can make in every single case that comes before you. Every case that comes across my desk, whether it be a misdemeanor or whether it be a serious felony, I do the best I can to make sure I'm getting the right result in that particular case. A right result by the community, a right result by the victim, if there is a victim, and yes, a right result by the defendant. We have a culture in our office that respects the rights of defendants, that makes sure that we provide discovery and provide Brady material, Brady being exculpatory evidence, Brady material that might exculpate or tend to exonerate somebody who's charged with a crime. We take those obligations very seriously. We take understanding and following the law very seriously. That has been the culture of the office the entire time that I've been there, and I will continue that. I think part of the ultimate answer here is where justice is found is in a courtroom. It's an adversarial system, and what that means is that the defendant has their own attorney. And again, we have a very good defense bar here in Staunton. Their job is to make sure that not only are their clients' rights respected, but that they get the best result they possibly can. And somewhere in that dialectic of we're doing our job, they're doing their job, that's where we find justice. It's ultimately decided by 12 members of a jury, 12 people selected from our community who get to hear a case if it goes to jury trial, and they decide what justice is in that particular case. And again, having meaningful, significant experience with criminal trials, with jury trials, I think is essential to being able to do this job properly.
Thank you. Would you
I think
like
I
to
got
repeat?
this one.
All right.
Justice. It is a moving target, is what justice is. And justice is not winning or losing. Rather, it is the right result for the case done publicly, where a defendant is held accountable, or the Commonwealth at the same time is held accountable to carry the burden to prove the case. That's why trial is one of the cornerstones of the criminal justice system, because the idea is that the government cannot just point at you and say, you did it, now just take what's coming to you. Rather, they have to lay out all the proof in open court and have it examined, and have not just the jurors or the judge look at it, but have that reported on, have the community see the job that you're doing. And justice is making sure that a defendant has their day in court, that the victim has their day in court, which you can start adding words to the word justice. One of my favorites is procedural justice, where the process of going through the criminal justice system, the end result of going through that process fairly and openly, is justice. Even if the result is not what you desired, the fact that you were prepared and did your best, that everything was in the open according to the law, that everyone was consulted who was a stakeholder, meaning that the victim was met with and prepared for the different options so that they felt they had a voice, so that the defendant had an opportunity to view the evidence with his attorney and understand all of the proceedings, even if he or she doesn't like what's going on. And that you have to make your arguments in open court. When you get to the end of that, especially on the stickiest cases, no matter what the result is, justice has been done. Now, there are lots of times when justice maybe isn't done. And sometimes a prosecutor's got to jump in. If there's an illegal search by a law enforcement official, justice already is on shaky ground. The Constitution may have been violated. It's the prosecutor's job to see that, not just wait for the judge or the jury to see that, to be dialed in to what's right, what's legal. And that's part of our ethics. Additionally, most cases don't go to trial. So how do you know justice is being done? It's by communicating with all the stakeholders and many times the community when you're dealing with plea agreements and why a case pled. Some cases, even if they don't affect people, affect the community, affect our feeling of safety, and affect our feeling of what's right in our town. And that goes back to transparency. Part of justice is transparency. Letting everyone know the reasons after the fact for why you did what you did, so that it's clear. Because the court system, certainly, if it's done in open court, things will be made clear. But most cases resolve on a plea. I'd say 95% of cases result in a plea, a guilty plea. So how do you make sure that justice is transmitted to the public? Tell them what's happening. And that's what I vow to do. I vow to tell the public why we do what we do so that they know justice happens in every case. Thank you.
Thank you. So this wraps this portion of the forum. So gentlemen, thank you so much for your participation and for your thoughtful answers. Let's give our candidates a round of applause. Everyone, please welcome Pete Barlow and Ken Mitchell to the stage. Both Mr. Barlow and Mr. Mitchell are candidates hoping to run for Virginia's 6th congressional district race in 2026 against incumbent Ben Cline. Thank you both for accepting our invitation to this forum. Appreciate y'all being here. Okay, Pete, I think we're going to give you the floor for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you all. There we go. Thank you all. Thank you for holding this space, LGBTQ Center, and for the Staunton Dems for co-hosting this. I'm so grateful to be here. I know that one thing that I'm certain of is that Ken and I are both supremely more qualified than Ben Cline to hold this office. I never intended to be a politician. I never intended to be up here, but then again, I didn't intend for most of the things that are going on right now. We all are suffering through this administration's onslaught of our social safety nets, our government programs that we've all come to rely upon. Marginalized communities are being more and more and more threatened by this administration. And 31,000 people are at risk of losing their Medicaid next year after the big bill goes through. Cancer research and infectious disease research is being undermined by administration. Our soft power is being threatened by the evisceration of agencies like USAID, our foreign diplomats, all of that soft power that we've relied upon for the last 85 years. So I am so grateful for forums like this and people like you who are willing to come out. We all have to work together on this because neither Ken nor I know everything that there is to know about this, but we do know that what's going on right now is not right. We do know that what's going on right now is not a fair representation of what we all stand for and the moral compass that we all espouse. I come from a family that has more than 10 generations in this valley. I come from a family of farmers and counselors and lawyers and carpenters and nurses and teachers, emergency managers like me. I grew up working in my family's cabinet shop and on beef and cattle farms in the Shenandoah Valley, and then dedicated my life to public service. I got degrees at Bridgewater College, and then at JMU and UVA got advanced degrees. And then after Peace Corps, after serving in Peace Corps, I went and served with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, working with Republicans and Democrats to make sure to conserve public lands, conserve our traditions of hunting and taking care of the resources that are all around us, these dividends for the future. The valley is full of beauty, but only if we are going to conserve it. So then I went to FEMA, where I recently was. I quit my job 2 months ago to run for this position because while I had intended on retiring from that position, I, starting on January 20th of this year, saw the last 6 or 7 years of mine and my team's progress on promulgation of public regulations and public policy being eviscerated, torched. And they were just common sense, practical solutions for disaster recovery. We were making sure that people we were protecting lives and infrastructure and ultimately taxpayer dollars by making sure that we built back better after disasters so that we would be preparing for the future. Because we believe in climate change. We believe in these things that are evidence-based, based in research and science, and are a threat to all these people in DC right now whose singular goal is self-enrichment and enrichment of their cronies. That's what it's all about. And I'm here, and I think Ken is here, to stand up against the grift that's going on right now. Nobody voted to take away health care from their neighbors. Nobody voted to defund our cancer research and programs for the least among us. Nobody voted for billionaires to get tax breaks. So people are feeling betrayed right now, and they have a right to be. And right now, we do have a chance, the first best chance we've had in the last 35 years to take this district back. So Ken and I are going to be working on getting this message out there to everybody throughout the 6th District. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Ken, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
I don't have quite as much to untangle here. Good evening. Thank you, Chris and the Staunton Dems for throwing this, and for the LGBTQ Center for hosting it. As Pete indicated, when we look out here over the last 10 months of what we have had to put up with as citizens of this nation, it is unfathomable of what we are being put through. When we look at the institutions that have been part of our nation for hundreds of years, and they are being torn down and dismantled, and we have this steady implementation of Project 2025. While the Trump administration is out here flashing around doing this, Project 2025 is relentlessly being executed. We know what the game plan is. They've printed it. It's Project 2025. What Pete and I are going to do is stand up and get up against Ben Cline and say, you have supported this 100%. You have put 795,000 Virginians in this district at risk. You have put 221,000 people in this district that rely upon Medicaid and Medicare at risk. You have taken 70,000 children and taken food from their mouths by cutting the SNAP benefits. 31,000 people in this district are at risk of losing their health care. That is unfathomable. And as Pete mentioned, nobody voted for this. Nobody voted to take away health care so billionaires can have tax cuts. And we have got to put a stop to this. And that's why Pete and I are dedicated to making sure that we run a good, clean race, that we get the message out to the people, and that not only to good Democrats, but we're taking this message to our independent neighbors, our Republican neighbors, so everybody has a fundamental baseline of where we're at. And I look forward to a good, productive, fair race with Pete, because he's a man of integrity, he is a man of honor, and I've come to respect him tremendously over the short time that I've known Pete. So my background's a little bit different than Pete, and I respect 10 generations. My lineage comes from not far west from here, from McDowell County, West Virginia, the third poorest county in this nation. I come from a lineage of coal miners, and my great-grandfather made sure that my father did not go into the coal mines, and he put him in the military at 17. And between my brother, my father, and myself, we have a combined 78 years of military service within our family. I proudly served for 24 years, numbers of deployments, overseas, assignment stateside. I am an Army signal officer and an aviator. And I am the proud father of 2 daughters, educated in Virginia from elementary school. I have a UVA grad, my oldest daughter, a JMU grad, my youngest daughter. Both of them are pediatric nurse practitioners, and I'm extremely proud of what they do. They have blessed our family with 5 grandchildren, 3 granddaughters, 2 grandsons. And part of the reason I'm standing up here doing this is the future of our children, the future of my grandchildren, and the future of women in this country, and all of the atrocities that are being perpetrated on the citizens of this nation. So we have a tremendous, tremendous responsibility running for Congress. As Pete says, we don't have all the answers, but what we will be skilled at is listening to you. Because when I look out here, I see my boss. My boss is you. And I'm going to make sure that your voice is heard in Congress. But we need you to do your part to get out and make sure that everybody and the committees throughout the district make sure that we get out and vote. We're going to do our best to try to get people the information they need. We're going to need everybody's help in making sure that that information is provided throughout this district, and that we make sure that we have a good, strong turnout. I am very proud. This is my 2nd time at running for Congress. My first time, I spent a lot of it up and down the valley, hitting all the Democratic strongholds. This year, I've worked with all the House delegates from east to west, hitting all of that, and been hitting a lot of the smaller towns and throughout the district. It's a big district. It's a lot to cover, but I think I've got the energy. I think I've got the talent to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barlow, this question will go to you first. Similar format, 2 minutes to respond, and we'll go back and forth on who starts first. So question 1, what specific avenues have you engaged to reach the more underserved and underrepresented communities across the district? What have you learned specifically from these conversations, and how will that inform your work in Congress?
Thank you. Yeah, we have started what we call a truck tour, going around the district and going to county fairs. And I've been doing it for the last few months, not as long as Ken has. But we have been going around talking to people of all stripes, people who are moderates and libertarians, some Republicans, people who are willing to just talk. And some of those conversations have revealed that if we hold space for people who disagree with us for long enough for them to hear also our rebuttal and respect it. I think everybody wants to be respected ultimately. Everybody wants to be in community And if we can do that, we can get this. We're not going to win this campaign on the votes of Democrats alone. We have to open our tent back up and talk to people who are moderates or are not traditionally the people that we've been talking to. And that's something that I think is so critical. And if we can do that, then, like Ken said, we have 795,000 bosses. We don't have just the Dems or just the Dems plus a couple. That is something that we all need to recognize. And so, the work in Congress is all about negotiation. And right now you see a Republican Congress trying to take a winner take all, or else they're not going to open the government back up. We're on day 14 of 150,000 federal employees in this district being traumatized, wondering if they're going to get paid after their furlough, after they get riffed. Are they going to get riffed? A lot of my colleagues at FEMA are anticipating that. And I think that we really need to open up those channels of communication, or else things are going to continue to deteriorate. So that's our approach. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, would you like me to? Of course, of course. What specific avenues have you engaged to reach the more underserved and underrepresented communities across your district?
As Pete indicated, the shoe leather that we have worn out going to fairs, going to all the different events and festivals that are being thrown throughout the district. We were together last night up in Stevens City and had a late night meeting with folks there. But, to get out and meet attending LGBTQ functions, throughout the valley, Roanoke, Winchester, Front Royal, getting out and meeting people. I was recently in Burkton and chatting with folks up there just near the West Virginia border. And as Pete indicated, when you have that conversation with people, and there are sometimes very difficult conversations, but when you have that conversation and you say, look, I want to listen a little bit more than I speak. What have you got on your mind? And you start to establish that rapport with folks, they start to open up. I was in Buena Vista, walking with the Lexington Dems, and walked upon Sons of the Confederacy tent that was there. And I walked up and they were saying, don't go there. And I said, no, I've got to. And I asked them, how many of you guys are military veterans? And 2 guys raised their hands out of about a dozen. And we got to talking, right? And I chatted with the guy, and we had served in an area together at one point. And I told him, I find it absolutely unacceptable that we served on the ground and we would have been in a foxhole together with an American flag on our shoulder. And here we stand in Virginia. Here we stand in Buena Vista, and you told me you won't even shake the hand of a Democrat. And I find that unacceptable, because we would have been back to back, and we would have fought tirelessly for one another. But we come back here and we're divided, and that's unacceptable. But I thank you for your service. I turned and walked away, and he came out from under the tent that they were in and said, wait a minute. I will shake your hand, because you're absolutely right. And it's those hard discussions that lead towards progress. And I cannot tell you how many independent, libertarian, and Republicans I have talked to. And at the end of the discussion, sometimes we agree with some things, sometimes we don't. But at least we start that first step of finding out that common ground, that middle ground that we share. And that is what it's all about, finding that and building on that. Not tackling the tough stuff up here, finding that common ground that we have, and then build towards tackling the harder things. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, this question is for you first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
There's no question that the Virginia 6th Congressional District is a tough one for Democrats. The incumbent Ben Cline won in 2024 with 63% of the vote. What is your strategy to mount a significant challenge to Ben Cline, and what in your past experience makes you ready for this challenge?
Excellent question. Excellent. It is a very, very difficult district. The sheer size of the district, the makeup, the demographics of the district is very hard. I think our success and what we've not done, Bob Goodlatte held that for, I want to say, 10 or 11 terms, you know. And when Ben Cline and Jennifer Lewis ran in 2018, she ran an excellent campaign. But what she didn't do is follow it up, right? Had she won, I think had she run back to back, we might have had a different outcome. So my strategy for winning is to take I think we got somewhere around 195,000 votes last election, is to not walk away from that, but look at it from a business perspective. That is an investment I made into this district to get name recognition throughout the district. I am not setting out a cycle. I'm running back to back and taking full advantage of the name recognition, fundraising, and all of those things that make a successful campaign. It is very difficult to gather that your first time out. And it is the recipe that we've done as Democrats. Jennifer ran. She set out Nick Betts ran and ran the next cycle. He didn't run again. Jennifer came back in under COVID, tried to run again, had less than she had the first time. So I think the key to success here is going to be repetitive, a candidate that comes out and says, look, I was here for you in 2024. The ups and downs of the whole Biden dropping out and Kamala Harris coming in, that 107 days, I was here with you, working hard with you to do that. And I think what we're going to do, this allows me now in 2026 to touch Democrats lightly and tell you, I have campaigned out here. You know me. I've got to get out here to the independents and the moderate Republicans out here and focus my attention on them. And I think what we will do is move the needle to that 51, 52%. And I think that is what's going to be the key to success. The hard work that I put in 24, the hard work I am doing working for House delegates throughout the district in 2025, will pay off in 2026, because not only will I be working up and down the valley, I'll be working east to west across the valley in these districts where I have worked with every one of these House delegates. So that's the key I think we'll see to success. Thanks.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question? Good. Let's see. What is your strategy to mount a significant challenge to Ben Cline? What in your past experience makes you ready for this challenge?
Thank you. Yeah, three things. I think we are an ag district. We have to talk better, more educatedly about ag issues. Right now, the tariffs are hurting farmers around here. We need to be able to talk about that in a coherent way. Democrats haven't been very good at talking about ag in the past around here. I think we really need to talk about the fact that $1 billion worth of soybeans go out of Virginia every year to China. Now China's not going to take any of them. We're not going to make up that difference with any other countries. And people are going to see a big profit loss. We need to hang that around the necks of the Republicans, because that's what they did. Secondly, so we need to talk about things like that with ag infrastructure. We also need to talk about just 81. 81 is a unifying feature of infrastructure for everybody in the 6th Congressional District. 72% of fatalities on 81 are car-truck interactions. The fact that we have had 30 years of Goodlatte, Cline incumbents around here who are just cronies, not doing their jobs, and we don't have a third lane for trucks, that's ridiculous. This is pretty common sense stuff that everybody can understand. Everybody can understand traffic. Everybody can understand being afraid for your life when there's trucks surrounding you. We need more places for trucks to lay over at night. It's not safe for them right now. And we also need to make sure that we have a third trucking lane. That's something that Ben Cline has voted down every chance he has gotten in General Committee in Congress. So that's something we need to do. Third thing is, let's get real about money. It's going to take $1.3 to $1.7 million to even be competitive in this district. That sounds like a lot. But if half of the people who voted against Ben Cline, Donald Trump, and talk about fascism every day, if half of those people, 72,000 people, voted against or paid $30 in this 6th congressional district, we'd have $2.2 million. So we all need to invest right now. We are investing our lives. We need people to start standing up, and we have those combined resources. So it's going to take money. It's going to be talking about ag in an educated way, and it's going to be talking about infrastructure in very common sense ways and telling them what Ben Cline has been voting against. Those are 3 big ones for me.
Thank you. Mr. Barlow, this question's for you. Virginia's 2025 elections are less than a month away, with many House and Senate candidates in tight races. Given the importance of this year's election, what have you done to support these candidates and ensure that they have the resources and funding they need to win?
Well, apart from just giving financially to my local and some other locals around, I was canvassing for Andrew Payton last week, and I really enjoyed it. I actually like getting out and talking to people and hearing what their actual concerns are. I was kind of appalled by the fact that some folks didn't even know who was on the ballot at this late game. You know, we're always submerged in politics, and we're thinking that everybody knows about Abigail Spanberger and Ghazala Hashmi and Jay Jones, but they don't. So we have to keep on talking about it. Every chance you get, if you talk to a neighbor, we need to tell them about who is actually running, because there's a lot of underinformed folks out there. And maybe it's because they worked a night shift every night last week, and they just don't have time for it. But we really have to get out there and spread the word.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Please.
Virginia's 2025 elections are less than a month away. Given the importance of this year's election, what have you done to support these candidates and ensure that they have the resources and funding they need to win?
Thank you. Thank you. When I started this year, I did hands-off rallies, no kings rallies. I can't count the times I've been on the steps of the courthouse in Staunton supporting that. But down in Roanoke and all of the No Cline rallies. But in August, I made a very conscious decision, early August, that I would put my campaign on campaign light and start focusing on the down ballot House delegate races. And I have been out canvassing with John Lucci up in Winchester, Shane Boswell, Kathy Reck, Andrew Payton, Gina Chrysler, young man Andrew Hartless that entered new. But I specifically made August, September, October, all the way up through the election, working for the House delegates, because I understand that with Virginia and New Jersey being the only 2 active states politically right now, the top of the ticket, Spanberger, Hashmi, and Jay Jones, they're getting money from out of state, pretty well resourced. But those down ballot candidates, they are struggling out there to get funding to run their campaigns. And I know that Pete has supported them tremendously as well. And what I'm going to do is run all the way through Election Day, working for these down ballot candidates, doing fundraising for them. I've strapped on a guitar and sung at fundraisers and tried to raise money for them, been out door knocking, going to fairs with them, and doing everything that they needed to do. 8 of the 9 candidates in the 6th Congressional District, this is their first time out running. And so I thought I could lend a little bit of credence and experience that I had as a first-time candidate and help them figure out, what are you going to do? Are you going to do texting, postcards, calls? Where are you going to spend your money? Billboards, radio advertisement, and kind of help them manage their resources to make sure that they got the most effective bang for their buck as they could for candidates out there. So to me, it was a matter of putting my campaign on light status and just doing events like this, but not really doing a whole bunch of fundraising and stuff, trying to take the oxygen out of the room for these candidates. So I'm 100% behind them and realize that if we do not give the new governor a House and a Senate, we'll have a lame duck governor. So we have got to make sure that we keep the House, keep the Senate, and make sure that Abigail and her team have all of the support in the General Assembly.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, this question's for you. I know, I realize it's hard to go back and forth. Amidst a government shutdown, politically charged rhetoric, and worsening conditions for our families in this region, many are losing trust in our democracy and political systems and institutions. What do you say to those constituents, and how are you going to restore this trust when you're in Congress?
You know, the easiest answer to that, how am I going to restore it? I'm going to do my damn job when I go to Congress and make sure that your voice is heard up in Washington, and to make sure that your interests are protected up in Washington. You know, we do lose a tremendous amount of trust among the working, and as Pete indicated, you know, they're not all up as probably political savvy as everybody in this room is, because they're working multiple jobs. They're working the second shift to help things get by. How are we going to help them? We're going to help them with the cost of living and try to make sure that what we do up there with SNAP benefits, with Medicaid, Medicare, all of the social safety nets that help them, that are put back in place. You remember when John McCain went on the floor of the Senate when the Republicans were trying to overthrow Obamacare at the time, and he gave it the big thumbs down. Well, we need to take a look at this bill, this reconciliation bill that they passed in July, and we need to take that thing, look at it, and say, hey, this is the parts we're going to go down. We have to make sure that we restore Medicaid. We have to make sure that Medicare cuts, SNAP cuts, all of those that are our social safety programs out there are fully funded. And we need to make sure, in particular for the young people, that we cut a path to figure out how we're going to deal with affordable housing, affordable childcare, the cost of living that keeps going up, health insurance, automotive insurance, home insurance, all of those costs of living that are going up. It is going to be a daunting task. And I don't think many people know, but there is a program that has not hit the floor of the House that takes private equity and hedge funds that hold single family homes that they have bought up out of the housing crisis for pennies on the dollar, and they've converted them to rental properties, and the rent keeps going up and up. We need to find the way, and there's, I think, a bill that has not been presented because it will not pass through a Republican House that helps divest private equity and hedge funds of single family properties. And that will hopefully free up some stuff that we can start getting young people in houses. The median age right now for a first-time home buyer is 52 years old, and that is not acceptable. How do you raise a young family like that? So I think what we've got to do is do our job. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, if you could.
Many are losing trust in our democracy and political systems and institutions. What do you say to those constituents, and how are you going to restore this trust when you're in Congress?
I say, first of all, to those constituents, I kind of feel the way you do. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy to keep on saying the government is worthless. If you say it long enough, people start to believe it, whether it's true or not. And people stop wanting to work there. We say we're not going to defund Social Security, but if you quit putting people at the Social Security offices to answer those phones, we're essentially just taking it away. We're making it so discouraging to try to get those benefits for people who are wondering when their check's coming. Or if we make it so onerous to be able to demonstrate for people with Medicaid that they meet certain work requirements or volunteer requirements, if we make it so onerous, they're not going to take advantage of those programs. So I think part of this cynical ploy that we see coming from the administration is not to take things away, but just to impose more and more and more complexity until people give up. And so that's why people are have started to feel like government isn't there anymore. We hear vitriol on both sides. I think one of the things that people might feel when they come to hear me and Ken talk is they say we get along too much and we agree on too much. They want to hear us disagree on stuff because that's what they're used to, because people don't talk about compromise anymore. People talk about keeping the government shut down until you get what you want. So here we are, 14 days in, 150,000 of our neighbors are waiting on those furlough checks that might not come. And we have a lot of people who haven't had the benefits of working for the federal government or as a contractor who are eligible for Medicaid, but don't know if they're going to get that. Eligibility for Medicaid is rendered in some places, in most cases, only to people who are making 135% of the poverty line, which is $21,500 a year. The fact that we are giving tax breaks to the richest 1% in our country, while we are trying to balance the budget on the backs of the poorest and most vulnerable among us, leads one to be very cynical towards what is the point of government then, if that's what we stand for. If what we stand for is giving the military nearly $1 trillion a year while we are defunding our auditors at the IRS and not even talking about term limits or flat taxes for some basic programs. Our tax system was 400, our tax book was 400 pages 20 years ago. Now it's 4,000. We have built in so many special interests for the richest among us that I can see why people are cynical. But we need to, like Ken says, the proof is in the pudding. Once they see what a real worker in the 6th Congressional District looks like, I don't think people are going to turn around and say, no, we want Ben back. Because right now, he's not doing anything, and people have gotten accustomed to that, maybe complacent. But we need to show them what real work looks like. So that's my answer.
Thank you. At this point, I think I've only received one question. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Just check in. It's a doozy, so you can spend some time. Do you mind?
Yeah, I'll write it down. Okay, yeah, I'll bring you something to write down.
You can
Okay.
shout it.
Okay, we'll start with this one if that's okay. I believe this goes to Mr. Barlow. You'll be running against one another in the primary. What I think I speak for everyone here that I appreciate the mutual respect that you have for both one another. But what sets you apart from your Democratic opponent?
I think all politics is local, and having someone who grew up here, who knows every nook and cranny of the valley and has been floating these streams and hunting these hills for their whole life is important. Secondly, I come from the Anabaptist heritage. I'm a Mennonite right now. My wife and I attend a Mennonite church, but I grew up Brethren. And Brethren and Anabaptist folks in the valley have a long history of standing up for the most marginalized communities. We were the activists. The Anabaptist communities were the moral underpinning for the culture that's now the valley that I think we all love. And I want to stand up for that and advocate for the fact that this sort of cruel version of Christianity is not what I grew up to believe in. And it's not what I think that we all stand for. I mean, we have all sorts of different religious and cultural backgrounds, but I think that we all understand that what's going on right now is not right. And I think that coming from that background, it's really important for me to advocate for that. And I've done a lot of hard blue-collar work in my life, cattle farms and poultry is the backbone of this valley, poultry and cattle. I think we're going to need somebody who has that background, who can actually talk about it and has deep roots here.
Thank you. What sets you apart from your Democratic opponent?
You know, I find it very interesting that both of us have farms, right? And I really respect Pete's generational history, and I think that is very important. I've only lived in Virginia for 36 years, raised a family here, all my kids attended school, but I think what sets us apart is experience. I've got a few years on Pete, you know, a military career that taught me discipline, and I traveled the world doing that, saw many different things. I've raised a family. I have grandchildren. All of these life experiences all matter. I've run my own business, a historic remodeling over in the 5th District. I have worked at Monticello as a vice president, overseeing all the buildings and grounds, and the recent renovations of Monticello, I oversaw that as a vice president in Monticello. I have been a vice president in a civil engineering firm where I did many, many projects here in the 6th Congressional District, stormwater management down in Roanoke, line expansions here in Staunton and Jolivet, line expansions in Waynesboro, built the wastewater treatment plant in Elkton, DEQ and EPA and all of that with their standards. Did the water district up in Woodstock. So I've got experience in the valley in business. I've got this in small farming. I've got experience here in the district building out infrastructure, working with many of the town councils, many of the boards of supervisors. So I've got that level of experience throughout the valley. I do, you know, my lineage comes not far from here, up near Tazewell, Virginia. And I understand, I too came from very, very mild roots, you know, very working class, blue collar, coal miners up in there. And I understand and appreciate that. And I can talk to almost anyone in this district and get along quite well with them, understand where they're coming from. So my 36 years in Virginia, discount the 24 years in the military that I spent, and when you start doing the math, you'll find out the majority of my life has been spent in Virginia by choice. I choose to live here, like many of you that come here as well, who choose to live in Virginia. So I think that kind of sets me apart a little bit, the overall experience factor between Pete and I. And Pete, I respect tremendously, but I think I've got him a little bit on the edge of experience.
Mr. Mitchell, I have a question for you.
I'll get this, but by the end of this I'll get it.
I'm barely holding it together. The Valley has lost 3 rural health clinics, with more possibly on the way. Representative Ben Cline refuses to even acknowledge it. What is your plan to save our clinics and improve rural health care?
You have to take a look at why we are losing rural health care. And again, it boils down to predominantly Medicaid cuts. And when we look at hospitals and we have critical care hospitals, I think we have 5 rural hospitals in the district. And when we look at those, we've cut a few clinics out of there, right? But when we look at the Medicaid cuts that have occurred, and when you look at the finances of a hospital, if you go up into Bath County, up into the Allegheny Highlands, and you go to Bath Community Hospital up in there, you find out that because of how Medicaid funds the hospitals, they only get a percentage of what their costs are, and so they're having to make up the delta out of their budgets and stuff. And it is not just here in the district; it's in any rural area in this country. So we have got to, I think, again, make sure that Medicaid is completely funded. Medicare is completely funded. 221,000 Virginians in the 6th Congressional District rely upon Medicaid and Medicare. And when we look at the cuts that we're having, they are simply associated with funding cuts at the federal level. We've got to make sure that all of our social safety nets are funded, and make sure that hospitals are working efficiently. We need to take a relook at how healthcare is managed in this country. Now, that isn't going to fix the immediate shortfall that we have, but it does go a long way in making sure that the money that we pay in our taxes is spent more efficiently by the hospitals. And it's not the hospitals, my friends. It's the insurance company. It's the proverbial middleman in this thing is where it gets so convoluted. So we have to, I think, take a look at how that is being done. I don't think I will serve on a committee that addresses that because my background will probably be in agriculture. It'll probably be in the armed services and that thing. But I would be very interested in making sure that I support any type of changes that would occur to the insurance side of the house and the medical side of the house. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to repeat? The Valley has lost 3 rural health clinics, with more possibly on the way. What is your plan to save our clinics and improve rural health care?
I think we really need to talk in real terms. I got my master's in nursing at UVA, and as part of that education, we talked about the importance of preventative care, the importance of avoiding that emergency room visit at all costs. And I think that we really need to. I agree with what Ken said. I just want to build upon that we need to think about the fact that a lot of people are saying no. You know, I talked to somebody the other day who said, "Why should I pay out of my paycheck for health insurance when these people are getting it for free? Why should they receive Medicaid for free?" And I said, well, you know, if you just want to talk dollars and cents, preventative health care is going to save so much money in the end. We're going to pay for those people if they need health care one way or the other. And would you rather pay small dollars for preventative health care, or would you rather wait until they come to your ER needing an intubation or an ICU visit? Either way, you're going to have to pay for it. Do you want to pay that high cost or the low cost? So that's one question. I think we just need to be honest with people about the fact that people are not going to not come to the doctor. They're just going to come one way or the other. Another thing is that I hear a lot of people saying, well, all the immigrants are receiving Medicaid. I think we all know that that's not true, but I think we also need to become armed with information. 0.4% of all Medicaid funds are emergency Medicaid. That amounts to $2.5 billion per year on average. So we need to understand that when they say $200 billion of Medicaid goes to immigrants, that's not true. And we need to call them out on that and defeat some of these lies with real facts, because that's going to be important at the end of the day. So I think that it's so important that we keep these clinics open. We talked about on CNN, our campaign was asked about the closures, and we talked about the fact that now somebody from Churchville, if a young woman needs prenatal care, she's going to have to drive all the way to Harrisonburg. We're talking about real time, an hour and a half on the road that she's not going to get paid to be at a job. So those are things that we need to keep on hammering on, and I think it will turn the tide. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, questions are rolling in. All right.
This is probably the last one we have time.
Okay. Let's see. Well, we have two. Okay. I will take them in the order. Okay. Both of you have mentioned, sorry, I should mention, Mr. Barlow, this question is going to you first. Both of you have mentioned different groups you are talking to, centrists, Republicans, and libertarians. What do you have for the leftists who are disillusioned with the Democratic Party? How do you propose to change the system while you court the people who are advocating to keep it as is? What are you going to do for the communities, like the transgender community, who are weathering unrelenting attacks by our federal government?
Yeah, and I am not in those shoes, but I do know that we have marginalized communities all around us. Complacency got us to the point where we lost Roe because for 50 years we rested on our laurels thinking that Roe was going to be protected, thinking that that was the law of the land just because a court that was given too much power said that it was, but we never actually worked to amend statutes to put that into law. In much the same way, I think complacency could get us into hot water as far as marriage equality. Equal rights for marriage is not in law. That's a court case. And we need to make sure that we put these things into law so that we protect those communities, because these things are so important. I think also we need to push back when we have people talking, demonizing different groups. We really have to push back. So that's how yes. And could you say the rest of the question again?
Oh God, can I repeat the whole thing? Both of you mentioned different groups who you are talking to, centrists, Republicans, and libertarians. What do you have for the leftists who are disillusioned with the Democratic Party? How do you propose to change the system while you court the people who are advocating to keep it as is? What are you going to do for communities like the transgender community who are weathering unrelenting attacks by the federal government?
Yes, and I think that a lot of times we get into these social issues where the other night I saw Abigail Spanberger being asked about protecting the transgender community, and she couldn't say yes or no. And I really think that we need to say, yes, I am going to overturn that executive order by Youngkin. I mean, this isn't a state, it wouldn't be a state issue that I would be addressing, but I think that we need to be honest with people and say, no, that's not okay. We are not going to unilaterally demonize different groups, and we're not going to be mealy-mouthed about it. I think we need to be honest. So that's something that I think is so important, and thanks for jogging my memory.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Would you mind reading that
I don't.
one more
Not at
time?
all. Not at all. Not at all. Let me get settled. Okay. Both of you have mentioned different groups who you are talking to, centrists, Republicans, and libertarians. What do you have for the leftists who are disillusioned with the Democratic Party? How do you propose to change the system while you court the people who are advocating to keep it as is? What are you going to do for the communities like the transgender community who are weathering unrelenting attacks?
Wow, that's 5 questions.
That's
But we'll give it a stab here. I think, number one, we have an opportunity by putting in folks as our delegates this year and sending them to Richmond, because one of the first things they're going to face are 3 constitutional amendments that are on the ballot here in Virginia. Same-sex marriage, reproductive rights, and the restoral of voting rights for felons once they have completed their time. So by getting elected officials in the House of Delegates that will support those amendments is one step forward. As Pete indicated, we're quick, and in this district, they're very quick to marginalize the LGBTQ plus and the transgender. And we have to stand up because human rights, rights and freedoms for Americans are rights for everyone, regardless of what your belief is there. And we need to make sure that we stand up. And I know Pete and I will stand up and defend their rights and their freedoms. That's 2. Can you read that, what we will do to the leftists? That's a tough question. I'm with you, Pete. I'm with you.
it's a
The
it's a tough
leftists,
one.
right?
Yes.
It's the leftists. Okay, that's a part I want to address. All too often, Democrats. How am I on time? 30 seconds. All too often, Democrats go at one another, right? And the left prevails over here, the moderate prevails over here. All in all, the Democratic Party is very, very supportive. But we've got to get away from this far left, far right mentality. We got to bring this nation back to the middle, where the common ground, the common good exists. And that's one of the things that I will be pushing for. If you lean to the left, that's fine. I'm going to try to pull you to the middle. If you lean to the right, that's not fine. I'm going to try to pull you to the middle. So that's how I look at it, at least. So that's a tough question. Jacob, did you write that question? Okay. That was a tough question.
This is the beauty of receiving audience questions. Tracy, do we have room for one more question? Okay, this is the last question, I promise. Yes, this is for you. What is your take on the way that the current administration is mobilizing federal military against our own residents? And how do you think it should be handled by leadership to help protect the constituency?
Well, having served in the military, I find it absolutely egregious and unconstitutional that this administration is deploying and federalizing National Guard against American people. I find that to be absolutely unacceptable in any way, shape, form, or fashion. National Guard deployed to help with FEMA and national emergencies. They're trained to do that. And I will guarantee you that the troops that are being deployed do not want to go there. And when we see them picking up trash in D.C., and they're deployed, removed away from their family, when we are spending $1.3 million a day for National Guard to be up in Washington. And I think a very, very, very serious issue is being done when we see Texas National Guard federalized and sent into Chicago. When we fought a civil war, we didn't have National Guards and all of that kind of stuff. We had state armies that stood up, and we had the Northern Army of Virginia and all of this. It is very, very shaky ground to deploy and federalize a state National Guard and send it into another state. That is just stepping all over the state sovereignty that we are setting here and desperately defending our state rights. Well, that steps all over it. And when you have red states like the governor of Texas that is willing to deploy troops against the into a state like Illinois against the governor's wishes and no need for it, and we the taxpayers pick that up, that is absolutely on the precipice of just unacceptable for our military to be deployed against citizens of this nation. And there is no place whatsoever in this nation to have federal troops deployed against its citizens. Absolutely none. And I am vehemently opposed to it, and I will make damn sure if I'm in Congress that I will make sure that the administration doesn't do that sort of thing. I will stand up and say, no, War Powers Acts do not apply here.
Thank you. What is your take on the way that the current administration is mobilizing the federal military against our own residents? And how do you think it should be handled by leadership to protect the constituency?
Does that include ICE, or we getting into that? Okay, let's talk about ICE. They've got a budget of that's larger than the IDF's. And we are now looking at $50,000 bonuses to get people to serve on ICE with their masks on and no identification on their vehicles. So I call that extortion when you're paying people just to do things that are not legal. But I think that it debases the oath. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, Ken, but it debases the oath that people in uniform took to tell them to be in American cities when there is no emergency, to use the Insurrection Act to place people, to deploy people all over the United States when we've got international conflicts that we could be dedicating resources to from the DoD instead. That seems like an egregious misappropriation of our resources. So that's one thing. I think that, and I just think that if I were in uniform, maybe you can tell me as well, but if I were in uniform, I don't think that I would be very happy standing guard beside a statue in DC or on a corner in Portland when that's not what I signed up for. So I think that it's wrong. And I think that it goes back to, and I've said this before, but James Madison, we all appreciate James Madison for his university. He was not a Republican. He was a Democrat, or he was not a Democrat. He was not a liberal. He was very conservative, but he did say one time, he said a lot of things that I think have a lot of prescience right now. He said, the day when our three co-equal branches of government become one, that will be the definition of tyranny. And right now we have, let's bring it back to Ben Cline because that's the object of our efforts here. Ben Cline has ceded his power of the purse to the president. He has ceded his discretion for habeas corpus and for due process to the president. Our three tiers are no longer co-equal. And we need to recognize that we are at an inflection point as a society, and these troops in the streets are just one example of what's going on. So thank you so much for tonight, and that's it for me.
All right, everyone.
And I would like to join Pete in thanking you for staying up this late and coming out here to do this. We're all in this together. We're all going to see our way out of this together. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This concludes the end of the Candidates Forum. Again, we covered a lot of ground tonight, so thank you so much. Thank you for submitting such thoughtful questions. And let's give these candidates another round of applause. Y'all deserved it.